Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. As always, I cannot wait to introduce our guest to you. But before I do, I want to thank some people that we always thank. I want to thank the Mighty Quinn Brass and Winds at brassandwinds.com. These are our friends who help us out when we're looking for instruments here at the Willows School. We highly recommend you check them out, brassandwinds.com. You are watching Truer MU. Welcome to my musical mind. I hope you find it interesting in here. I try to find interesting people and ask interesting questions, and I know a few people more interesting than my next guest, Mr. Jimmy Galloway. Let me tell you a little about him. Jimmy Galloway plays multiple string instruments and is taught at Atlanta Institute of Music. He specializes in fingerstyle guitar using partial capos, altered tunings, and electronic manipulation. After graduating from the University of North Carolina at Asheville with an audio degree, he spent time in Nashville as a touring and session guitarist, and he currently resides in Tennessee outside of Chattanooga. Jimmy, how are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Good. It's great to see you. I've had the pleasure of playing with you just a few times, and I can tell our audience your reputation is quite solid here. We're really delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. For folks that don't know you, and I'm hoping that's a very small group of people, you're quite well known as a guitar player. I want to know for the first thing I want to know is, was it always the guitar? Some people start on a different instrument and then they kind of make their way to the guitar. Was it for you guitar from the start?
Yeah, it was. I remember from a very young age really liking the sound of the guitar and just always drawn to it. My parents loved music, but they didn't play. And they just always, we would do road trips and they would point out certain music. Oh, listen to that. Listen to that. They would listen to the beat and they were, they weren't aware of it, but they were musicologists.
Oh, you got to say more about that.
Yeah, well, they just loved music, pop stuff, and they really. My mom would sing around the house all the time, and I thought it was embarrassing then, And man, I give anything to hear my mom sing now.
Yeah, of
My
course.
parents have moved on, so um, but that got me into it, and they were super supportive, super supportive. I didn't have brothers and sisters, so the guitar was the friend that
Yeah.
I always had. And it was very rewarding for me when I got started because um, I pretty much uh, I was one of the weird kids. I read the encyclopedia for fun. I'll never forget. This was like the very late '70s, and you remember they used to have guys going door to door doing the Encyclopedia Britannica, right?
Yep,
Well, my
right.
parents bought the whole set, and then the people at school were like, "Your son's really bored. He needs something." And then they bought me like this crazy uh, huge suitcase of things, and it had a wheel and options. I can't remember the name of it, but that was pretty wild because it was kind of like a choose your own adventure, and it had tons of subjects in it. But I probably went through the encyclopedia a dozen times or more,
Wow.
to start to finish. Yeah, I was could name all the dinosaurs, all the weird stuff. Yeah,
Now,
I
I've also perused the Britannica a few times, and those articles are not easy. That's pretty in-depth stuff.
yeah, I was yeah, I've just always I don't know the things that were the things that people really like to do that were the kids my age. I just it was boring. I,
Yeah.
I, yeah, and being in the outskirts of Charlotte in North Carolina, you didn't get challenged much. Well, I didn't meet those opportunities. So I withdrew, and the guitar was the, the method I withdrew. So my
Ah.
parents knew where I was all the time. I was back there with the door closed. I would do all my homework at school, and I would come home and I would be playing till well after dark. And on the weekends, I was back there with the door shut 10, 12, 15 hours, Saturdays and Sundays.
Wow.
And I had a friend next door, and he was older than me, and he started playing. And I couldn't have him be better than me because he's older than me. He was in high school, so, um, he kind of pushed me to, you know, want to do you know, the one-upmanship, so to speak. And we had a ton of fun, and um, yeah, so it just kind of took off, and I wound up getting lessons from a guy that's terrifying, and I'm still friends with him,
Jim Birch.
Jim Birch. Yep, I'm still friends with him. I talked to him just 2 weeks ago, and he's 30 years almost to the day older than me.
Oh
So
wow.
he's 78 years old, still playing, and he's terrifying. So you and I know Lindsay Petch from Maple Street Guitars,
Hmm.
and I was telling Lindsay years and years uh, how amazing Jim is, and Jim's kind of he keeps to himself, so he doesn't like a lot of company. He's kind of a hermit,
Hmm.
but he agreed to have Lindsay and I take a road trip and go see him. And we walk in the door, and there's a guitar on the couch. He's like, "Yeah, I just wound up putting a pickup in this thing. I'm working on it for somebody." And he just picks up this little, cheap acoustic thing, and he starts playing. And Lindsay looks at me.
Nothing's
No,
changed.
yeah, like I told you. There's really, when I was at Atlanta Institute, I was lucky enough to get Tommy Emmanuel to come and do a master class. A friend of mine, Gene Quinn, uh, is Tommy's webmaster, and Gene's a monster guitar player. And Tommy was coming to Atlanta, and I was like, "Well, I'm teaching at AIM. I wonder if Tommy would want to come and do a master class one night before his two shows at like he was out of the I think it was at the Variety. He sold the Variety out 2 nights in a row. And we got him there, and he showed up and played, and he's wonderful. But I'm saying that to say this: Jim is at the Tommy level, and I think he's a little more versatile, if you can
Hmm.
believe that. I mean, so when Jim started playing, Lindsay's eyes were like, huge. I was like, I told you, you know.
So when you say
Uh,
he's terrifying, you don't mean his personality was terrifying, just his talent was terrifying.
oh, his playing's just it's scary how good he is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrifying. He's the kids talk about, people are, they're monsters. They're terrifying.
Right,
So
right.
it's just basically uh, it's just humbling to be in the vicinity of somebody like that.
Yeah.
And that got me. Well, that set the bar for me early on. So I was like, well,
Mhm.
everybody does that. Everybody plays like that. No, they,
Okay. So
they
you
don't.
didn't realize how good he was when you were 14.
Well, I just thought everybody did that. And then, and I was like, why can't I do that? Because he's doing that. I guess everybody's that good, right? I
Right. I
didn't
must be the
realize
worst
that
guitar
he's
player there is.
right, right, right. So I was like, this guy's like a savant genius, right?
Yeah.
And so then I was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And I caught on pretty quick. Um, and we I wound up going off to school, and we kind of parted ways there for a while, and then I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and but then we reconnected, and I yeah, he's still my friend. And I'm super fortunate
Well,
to still have him around.
how did he teach you? What was his method?
Well, um, it's really funny. I had a teacher, and it didn't take off for me. So I had an acoustic guitar, and it wasn't a good fit, and it just stayed the case. And my parents were like, "Well, I want you to play music, and I know you want to play music. We got to find you a different teacher." I was like, "Okay, let's do that." So we were at this outdoor festival, and there's this shag band. It's North Carolina, so they were doing like the beach hits and all the things. There was a guy that was pretty good there, and my dad started talking to him. He was like, "Hey, do you teach?" He's like, "You don't want to take lessons from me. You want to take lessons who I take lessons from," and it was Jim Burke.
Got it.
So we wound up being on a waiting list. It was like an 8-month waiting list.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. He had at least 75, 85 students. Um, you know, he taught like 6, 7 days a week. He just stayed at
Yeah.
his house. So we finally got a call right when I turned 12, 1986. And hey, we got a spot for you. Come like Thursday night. It was December. It was dark. So it was, I think those were kind of earlier lessons, maybe 5:30 ish. And I walk in, he's there with a tank top, shorts, and he's a big guy. Um, just he's tall and built. He's imposing, really. And I walk in. I'm 12. I'm skinny as a rail, and I've got this little Strat copy. And he says, "Hold out your fingers." So he's sizing me up immediately, and he's like, "You got French fry fingers." He's like, "You like the guitar?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I'm gonna teach you something." He's like, "Check this out," and he immediately starts going into Metallica Sanitarium because I'm 12, right?
Right.
So he thinks, "All right, I'm gonna get this kid," and I think that's the coolest thing because I just started getting into Metallica from my next door neighbor that's uh, older than me, and he's got a bunch of older brothers too, and he's playing. And I was like, "Oh wow, if I can play Metallica, I'll be better than him in no time, right?" So he's showing me that, and I'm able to, put it together. Uh, not professionally or anything, but at least I had the concept. So at the end of it, he says, "All right, so I'm gonna make you a deal. This is how we're gonna do it, and this is his method. I'm gonna show you what you want to learn, and the next week you have to learn what I want to show." So I would bring in Metallica, Judas Priest, Yngwie Malmsteen, Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai, the Eagles, Mark Knopfler, uh, you know, and then I brought in Salt the Swing. He's like, "Oh, well, if you like this guy, you need to learn this," and he would play me the deep cuts, right?
Yeah.
But then we would do the swap. So the very next week, he'd be showing me Chet Atkins or Django or uh, the crazy thing is there was a guy he taught outside of Charlotte, and it turns out that guy was the cousin from Maine of Lenny Bro.
Huh.
I don't know if you know who Lenny Bro is.
No.
Lenny Bro was probably the most harmonically inventive guitar player of the last 100 years. And so Jim taught his cousin
Yeah.
and got a lot of inside baseball about Lenny. Lenny's
Ah,
incredible.
okay.
Yeah.
You know, did
But
they meet? Yeah.
yeah, so they didn't meet. Lenny passed away. It's there's a really good documentary. I'm friends with his daughter Emily Hughes on Facebook, so I follow the happening. So they've done a documentary, The Genius of Lenny Bro,
Hmm.
and I think you can view that on YouTube. There's definitely sections you can. I think you can watch the full thing. Um, oh, it's unbelievable. So he could do everything Chet Atkins was doing at 17 years old, and Chet heard about him and brought him to Nashville. And by that time, he got bored and started playing, Bill Evans style piano stuff on guitar. He was like
Guitar.
getting that harmonic complexity, right?
Wow.
So then he did that. He was doing like jazz and bebop, and his phrasing was killer. And then he got bored and then dove into flamenco. So he went from the right hand thumb pick and the fingers to the traditional flamenco grip. And then he mixed it all together. And then he started hanging out with George Van Epps, and because George Van Epps kind of pioneered the Gretsch with the 7 string archtop jazz guitar. And then he started getting into 7 string guitar, and he started hanging out with Tal Farlow and all those cats. So George Benson will tell you Lenny Bro is probably the scariest cat out there.
How do you spell
So
his last name?
Breau. He was French
Okay.
Canadian,
I'll
and
have to
his
look him up.
parents, yeah, his parents were like a traveling family band kind of thing.
Hmm.
And as a young child, he was traveling with them, doing radio shows, dance halls, et cetera, et cetera. Not unlike Tommy Emmanuel. Tommy started in the family band. He was playing professionally at 6 years old. So I didn't have that luxury nor the talent uh, to do that. But I've had a lot of fun so far.
How long were you with Jim Birch?
At least 5 years, and then I started working, getting pretty good at college, and he kind of started being reclusive. He
Mm.
wasn't he was burnt out. He was
Yeah.
just teaching too much. So he started kind of being reclusive and just wanting to hang around the house. And I don't blame the guy, but it was crazy because I would try every week to stump him just to test him, like kids, teenagers do, just like with
Right.
their own parents, right?
Hmm.
I couldn't stump him. I couldn't stump him. I could bring in the craziest thing, and there's no way he could even show it to me and me play it. But I just was testing him, testing his limit, and yeah, I couldn't stump him. So that set the bar really high. I got into college, couldn't read music,
Yep.
took 8 music classes. So I was taking like theory one, guitar ensemble, history of music, oral skills, uh, a couple other studio engineering, because
Hmm.
that's what I went. I went for audio,
Yeah.
but I still had to get all the other stuff, and that was incredible because I was way in over my head. And honestly, I didn't have the music theory knowledge for the basic stuff. Now uh, I knew all this. I knew the entire music theory as far as chords, like
Hmm.
majors, minors, harmonizing the major scale, uh, relative minors. Knew some about dominant chords, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, I couldn't draw you an eighth on a
Interesting.
stat.
So
I
you
couldn't
had
do it. Yeah,
working physical knowledge of music theory, but
yeah.
not an intellectual understanding of it.
That's that. Well, I never was shown because he didn't show that to me. He knew some, but he didn't know that much as far as the written music. But his ear was amazing,
Sure.
So my ear was pretty good, pretty good. So I faked my way through a lot of it. But then I wound up learning, and that first semester was trial by fire. Um, but my ear got me through it, and then I got. It's amazing because I wound up just really getting turned on to a lot of stuff, and then I would learn the names for it. Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
I've already been doing that. That's what you call that. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. So it's funny, I was teaching a guy, he is a professor at a private school here. He was my last lesson tonight. And he's total math guy. He teaches math at a prep school. And he just needs to understand music in those terms.
Hmm.
And we were something as simple as like, he's really going, just in 3 months, he's going on his own and learning songs. He's like, hey, I'm stumped. Why does this work? So it's like John Denver, Country Roads. Uh, this says the bridge, and it's in the key of A, but then it's F sharp and E and D and A, but then this G comes out of nowhere. Like, well, okay, well, the bridge is where people get creative. They're trying something musically, either rhythmically or harmonically or both. So they're going to step out for a minute and bring something. And then they're going to go right back. He's like, well, where's the G come from? It's not in the key of A. It's like, but it is in the key of D. And he's thinking in the key of D, and that's a 4 of D. And then before you know it, it's gone and it's back to A. So then I'm like, here's another example of a popular song that you didn't know what it was, but I'm telling you what it is. It's Every Breath You Take, the Police.
Right.
You're in A flat major. You're going 1 down to 6, then you're walking up 4 and 5 and back to 1. That's the verse. Then the bridge comes, and they do a parallel minor modulation. So then he's going to the flat 6, the natural E major, then the F sharp major, then he's thinking back and forth 4 and 5, and then he hits that high A flat note in the vocal, and that brings it on home for him to go right back to A flat major. And like that is a parallel relationship. You jump off. So it's crazy because for me to fluently say that like it's nothing, that comes from playing guitar 37 years, maybe
Yeah.
something like that, 38 years, something like that. So, and I couldn't have explained that when I started, and I can explain it like I'm putting on my shoes now, you know.
Right.
Um, so it's just incredible. It's like compound interest. You pick up a little bit, and then before you know it, you know, you open up your latest bank statement, you're like, wow,
Right.
there's a couple zeros there. That's pretty amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I want to ask you about reading music. Did you end up learning how to read music while you were at college, or did you just end up faking it?
Oh no, I learned
Hmm.
because I was analyzing Wagner.
Okay.
We had to, and here's the crazy thing for a hillbilly from West Gastonia, North Carolina. I went to hippie college, UNC Asheville. I had amazing teachers. Joyce Dorr went to, I think she's from University of Michigan, the goddess of music theory. Joyce took a chance on me, and I'm forever grateful because she's like, you got a big learning curve here. You're going to apply yourself. And they didn't offer, she's like, you need to be an intro to music theory, not theory one. I'm like, I'll work really hard. Please put me in there because it'll add me back another year into school,
Right.
yeah. So she put me in there. So what's crazy is I couldn't read the first semester. Then I'm basically analyzing Bach fugues and checking out the melody and foot pedals and seeing all the ostinato patterns. And then I'm going into Beethoven. I'm going into Brahms. Going into. I was huge into Wagner. I just loved this, just how harmonically rich it was. And then he's inventing horns. He's like coming up with actual instruments because they didn't exist. And then I went through the romantic period of it. And the thing that turned me on the most, that's when the switch hit, is Beethoven. He started to get like Hungarian sixth, the Pauline sixth. Um, he started getting into, and then Wagner, and then Brahms, and then the thing that just lit me wide open, and I just aced all of it, was Schoenberg
Yeah.
and the tone rows. So I could build tone rows. I wrote pieces, and I was doing, and I was analyzing Pierre Linaire. I was analyzing Weber, Vazek. I was analyzing. I was finding prime and retrograding versions, and reading all the staffs and circling everything. And
Hmm.
oh, it just that made total sense to me. And it's like some people are like, that is unlistenable.
Yeah, I want to interject for the audience who may have heard of Wagner but may not know Schoenberg. And he's maybe the first to take a complete plunge out of music that sounded like what most people considered music. And it's highly mathematical in nature. And it was followed by music that was even more highly mathematical in nature. So this is music that, well, Schoenberg's music, I love his music and I find it listenable. But it did launch a wave of music that perhaps really wasn't listenable. And so Schoenberg's reputation has somewhat been tarnished since. But, I can understand your love of him. I share it.
Yeah, it's honestly, when I heard Pierre Linaire for the first time, I can't describe what that feeling was. I was like, what is this?
Yep.
And honestly, it's a love or hate thing.
Hmm.
Either you're like, oh my God, what is this sound? It's incredible. Or, oh my God, what does it sound?
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I was just, see, for me, I'm always trying to figure out the sound. I'm constantly, it's like a guy that cooks. You can't go out and enjoy a meal. You're not taking Gordon Ramsay to Applebee's. You know, you're going to go to Morton's and be like, oh, okay, well, he did a reverse sear and then he rubbed, there's probably some coriander in this somewhere. You're just trying to backwards engineer it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you hear something you can't backwards engineer because you just don't have an idea of the of how the sausage is made, basically. That's fascinating. It's like Hendrix. Uh, for years, I was listening to If Six Was Nine, and I was trying to figure out at the very end how that whistling sound he did it. And then you can hear clapping. And I'm like, how did he do that? What is that? And according to Eddie Kramer, who produced the record, he said he was playing a recorder and it was distorting the microphone. And you can hear a lot of clapping and yada yada. But I got the same sound. one time by accident. I was singing on a hot mic with the cans, and I didn't stop the track, and I lifted the cans off, and the mic's right here, and it caused the feedback loop. And then I was like, oh, and I closed it, and it stopped the feedback. So then I was doing this with the headphones, like, oh, I can control this. So then it was like, what happens if I put delay on? What
Yeah.
happens if I put a fuzz pedal on this? And like, so then it's like, but yeah, man, there's so much stuff out there to figure out. And, you go through phases where, you got to take breaks from music as far as like the hyper analytical part of your brain
Right,
and
right.
just enjoy
Well, it
and
does
I
get
catch
hard
myself
to,
doing,
yeah. It can be hard to enjoy music when you're good at it.
yeah, there's that. We were talking about that with the professor. Uh, he's like, I can't imagine you go out to shows and enjoy shows. And I'm like, well, it depends on the show,
It does, yes.
you know, like, if I went to go see uh, Jimmy Herring and John McLaughlin, that
Yeah.
reunion tour of Mount Vishnu. I saw that at like the Atlanta Symphony Hall,
Hmm.
and that was just unbelievable. Um, so yeah, that's amazing. I saw the Sparrow Quartet. That was Abigail Washburn, Bela Fleck, Casey Dreyson,
Oh,
Vince
wow.
Lee,
Yeah, yeah.
and I don't even know how to explain that. I'm like, well, there's a woman that's fluent in Mandarin, and she sells out 70,000 seat arenas with a clawhammer banjo. And then you have a chamber ensemble doing incredibly intricate pop tunes,
Yeah.
and she's vacillating between English and Mandarin. And that doesn't sound appealing to the average
Wow.
person, but I got to tell you, that's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. It was incredible.
Right.
So when you see people operate at that kind of level, it's super inspiring. You know,
Well,
um,
okay. I'm getting a lot of interesting stuff here. Now, you start out by being an encyclopedia reader, right? So, a very analytical mind, right? Then you get into guitar and you're very much taking it in emotionally. What you hear excites you. Then you go to college, and once again, it's back to intellectual. Like, what did being able to see music do to you as a musician?
well, honestly, I didn't use that skill as much as I should because I did. If I were to put percentages on it, I was about 35-ish% reading,
Hmm.
and then I would read it and memorize it, and I wouldn't have to read anymore, and I could focus on playing.
Okay.
You know,
But you're still
because
studying music with your eyes. That's the thing
I,
I'm asking about.
that's right. Yeah. I'm grateful that I did it. I can't really do it proficiently now. Uh, Man, when I got out of college, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to Nashville. I'm gonna be a session guitar player. Like I'm the only one that ever had that idea.
Don't tell anybody, right?
Right. Secret's out, unfortunately, but um, those guys aren't reading, but they're making Nashville charts, Nashville
Right.
numbers, and that's a super useful skill. Uh, I love that. If you're wanting to look for the sweet spot of music for a working musician, if you can just bang out a numbers chart or you can learn stuff like, somebody will want me to do sessions and they'll send me the tracks and I'll just work up a numbers chart real quick. Um, and I'll make little notes on the side, like uh, for me, like, okay, I need to use a fuzz here. I need to use an ambient reverb. I need to use this. I need to do a dotted eighth delay pattern. I need
Yeah.
to do some sort of double stop kind of thing. So I'll just have like the skeleton, and then I got my little notes, and I go and a take or two, boom, done. And now you don't even have to go anywhere because people just email you tracks, and you can
Right.
just pull them up and just play in the box, and then go right into a DAW, and then email them back, and it's amazing. I, for me, I'm late to the technology game, but man, we're living in a golden age. I mean, I'm playing through a computer. I basically play through a floor processor. I haven't played through an amp in 6 years.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So if I couldn't imagine having YouTube and a processor in college in 1993. So these guys really are blessed that they have the technological advances that we come up with. Um, Unfortunately, there's a downside to that because now with social media, people need to have like the perfect stuff, and you get to see all the shiny bits.
Hmm.
They're giving you 30 seconds of something they probably recorded several times. You know,
Hmm.
um, and you're getting like the perfect guitar. But if you handed that guy a Strat and a cable and a deluxe and said, "All right, play the gig," they don't even know how to make a Fender Deluxe sound. A lot of these younger guys now because they never played through an amp. It's always been a processor,
Right. Right.
you know. So I'm kind of in the middle of, I'm a Gen X, and I guess the latest crop is Gen Alpha. I think that it's already started over again or something.
Okay.
Um, I know this because I had four girls, of
Right.
course. But yeah, it's kind of cool to be in the sweet spot and just use your ears and be open. I
Hmm.
guess is the main takeaway for that is, I keep the wonderment and keep the curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
still have that.
the ears and the heart for you, it's very important. You hear the music and you can feel it, and that goes beyond just studying it.
There's certain things I don't want to learn how to play. I know there's a rabbit. It's a trick. I know. I could figure it, but I don't want to, it took me forever. I fought with it, and I finally learned how to play the Rain song, Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
I learned it like 20 some years ago.
Sure.
I didn't want to learn it because every time I hit play and I heard that first chord break, I was I was transported. I was in a different place.
Oh, that's why you didn't want to learn it.
I didn't want to learn the magic trick. It's kind of
Mm.
like your favorite meal if you go out to a restaurant. I don't want to backwards engineer this. I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
go enjoy somebody else and
Yeah.
their cooking. I don't want to understand what's in the secret sauce.
I
I
understand
just
that.
want to go and enjoy it. You know,
Yeah. I've
it's
ruined
like
that feeling
Michael.
for myself many times by
Yeah,
studying
yeah,
something. I know what you mean.
yeah. Michael Hedges is like that to me. I have so much respect for his work. Could I play it? Yeah, I could play it. Um, and some of it's going to take work. I mean, he was technically very proficient, uh, and just super creative. Uh, but I don't want to learn
Sure.
because I want to just be amazed.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be a listener for that. A side note on Michael Hedges, he died in '97. It was a bad car wreck, and his son and his brother are putting together a documentary called Oracle, and it's about to be. They got it funded, and they're about to be airing it. And I've been a huge fan since the early '80s. I had a friend. His mom used to come over to my house and cut my mom's hair. So then she had her son and couldn't leave him at home, so brought him over.
Yeah.
Oh, he plays music too. You guys will hit it off. Well, turns out the guy was a huge Rush head. He had a Ricky 4003 bass. He's a killer artist. He could play all the Rush stuff, the Getty stuff. He was a beast, and he would come over and hang. We had a blast. He was a great player. Max was his, and he comes over uh, maybe the second or third time. He's like, "Hey man, I got something for you," and it's those Max Cell 90-minute tapes. It's like 45 and 45.
Yeah. Yeah.
The first side was Breakfast in the Field, and you flip it, and it's Aerial Boundaries. So it was the
Hmm.
first two Michael Hedges records.
Yeah.
And he's like, now this is one guy with a guitar. There's hardly
Right.
any overdubs except when Michael Manring's playing bass.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's this one thing that's a tape manipulation thing he did at Peabody in the lab there, where he did a bunch of backwards guitar overdub things. But it's basically just recorded live and it's pristine. The
Yeah.
guitars are just like a cathedral.
And
Uh, that's the pinnacle of acoustic guitar sound for me. Is my
yeah, yeah. He came to Oberlin year after year. He was friends with the guy that booked the place, so I got to see him I think 4 or 5 times. And I saw him in a master class, and I got into an argument with someone once because they said, "Oh no, that's all overdubbed." And I said, "No, I was in a master class 10 feet from him, and he was playing three things on the guitar: one here, and one here, and it was all happening at the same time."
yeah, it's when you see him do that live, it's disgusting.
Yeah,
It's so one person. I don't think people realize how far he set the bar uh, with virtuosity, and his compositional skill is really where there's a lot of guys out there that listen to Michael Hedges and they want to pay homage to him, but their melodies and their compositions aren't strong. I call it slappity pappity guitar.
okay, yeah,
You know
right,
what I mean? It's
sure,
just slappity. It's just a bunch of smalts, just a lot of flash, no substance.
right.
Here's the thing, man. You want it when you play something. You want somebody to remember what you played. Maybe you do some sort of weird note or approach or sound, or it's got to be memorable, like a melody. That's why people love David Gilmour. That's why people love Mark Knopfler. That's why people love Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton. Those guys are talking with their instrument.
Yeah.
If you can hum the melody of the guitar, that guy is doing his job. So that's
Yeah. And
you
Hedges
know
was a great singer and songwriter as well. Beautiful voice
beautiful.
and great songs. He was a beautiful person. He really was.
Yes,
So it wasn't
yes.
just that he could do these crazy things no one else could do. That was just him expressing who he was. It wasn't him trying to show you how great he was.
I'm looking forward to this biography of his.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like 1987 when Max gave me that tape. So
Hmm.
he'd already put out Taproot. He and then Watching My Life Go By was a singer songwriter record in '85, I think.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, man, and yeah, everything about it's amazing. So there's so much good stuff out there. It's just hard to find now. I got to say, I wish music was a little less accessible because people take it for granted more.
Well, yeah, sure, for sure.
You can't. You're on hold with the doctor's office. There's music. You're
Yeah.
filling up gas, and there's either music or a commercial and a TV on the gas pump. You get in the elevators, music. Uh,
Sometimes it's pretty
every
good too.
Yeah, every time you turn around, people are piping in music to augment your experience,
Yeah.
but then they don't want to pay you. I mean, the rates for musicians until they, build some sort of, market for themselves. I mean, going out and gigging it's like the '70s, man. It's crazy,
Right. In terms of
you
how
know.
much you're making. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I've really, I'm kind of up here in Mayberry on top of a mountain with a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and it's kind of great to be honest with you because I've got a setup at the house and I'm constantly recording and learning how to edit videos and teaching and doing Skype, and
Yeah.
I don't have to leave the house. I don't need to lug my gear out of the house, go to Billy Joe Fishy Bob's Crab Shack and stand under a flat screen TV and
And hope
and then
someone's
somebody's
listening.
and hope somebody's listening, or they'll
Yeah.
come up and throw something in a tip jar and be like, hey man, can you play like whatever it is I don't want to play? because I've been working on my original stuff for a long time,
Right,
and
right.
I'd rather play my original stuff and make put putting a price tag on your creative outlet. That's a really tough thing to do. That's something I'm working on right now, but at least I'm fortunate that I do have the creativity and the outlet for that.
Yeah.
So it's something we all go through, I imagine. Um, but I'm just happy to be here.